If you like what I do, consider supporting me on Ko-fi or Patreon. Links in the description.
It's called hentai. And it's art.
Aestik is a 2D hand-drawn Metroidvania developed by Hooded Traveler Games, a two-person Swiss studio consisting of Nick the Thick and Julia Vander. I've been following Mr. The Thick's devlog on YouTube, and I gotta say, he's a funny dude. And his devlogs are very informative and entertaining, tackling things like progression systems in a Metroidvania, boss design, map design, and yeah. Anyone who looks at Aestik might easily guess where Senor El Thick may have gotten his inspiration. But that's okay. We're all amalgamations of what inspires us. Therefore, it's vitally important we carve out our own identity along the way. To understand Aestik's unique identity, we first need to know what it's about. You play as an unnamed owlet, a visitor to the realm of Aestik for unknown reasons. During his journey, he'll meet all kinds of characters, make all kinds of choices, and be forced to deal with the consequences of those choices as he makes his way to his ultimate goal, whatever that is. Yeah, I kept the summary brief and vague for a reason. The journey and its discoveries are part of Aestik's charm. But what else does Aestik have to offer Metroidvania fans?
Combat.
Your little owlet, I'm just going to call him Owlet moving forward, likes to keep his beatings simple initially, but he eventually branches out to make his beatings a little more complex, as one does. For starters, Owlet has a 3-hit ground and air combo with his staff that just has an incredible reach. A real lady pleaser. And he also starts with the always amazing POGO aerial downstrike. Let me tell you about this POGO attack. It's broken, and I love it. Please do not nerf it. Ever. Owlet drops down on enemies with his whole being, bounces upward, and then can repeat this until the enemy is thoroughly annihilated. Enemies, regular and bosses alike, stand very little chance against such an overpowering attack. Not only is it effective, but it's also a lot of fun. Do not nerf it. Ever. As the game progresses, Owlet will unlock runes, items he can equip that do all kinds of things. I'll dive deeper into runes in other sections. For now, let's talk about their offensive capabilities. When it comes to offensive runes, like firing off a blast or chucking stars, these require essence. Essence is essentially your MP and is gained by killing enemies, not just hitting them, which makes sense in the story's context. Owlet can hold a maximum of 4 essences, and offensive skills cost 1 or 2 essences per use. Another very important use of essence is healing. Initially, it costs 4 essence to heal 1 hit point, but this is a Metroidvania, so expect that to change as you progress. So I'll talk about it more in the progression section. The final important piece of combat is another rune you can equip that allows you to parry. Much like parrying in other games, timing's key. I hardly ever use parries because I just would rather jump out of the way of attacks, but when I used parry, it felt responsive and the timing window seemed fair enough. Plus, successful parries can gain you some essence you can use to either heal yourself or to attack your enemy, so a risk-reward factor is present and appreciated. As far as bosses go, they're mostly pushovers. I don't think I had an issue with a single one. I came, I saw, I conquered. And by the time I got to the late game bosses, I had my healing abilities so jacked up that I face tanked every single one of them. So if you're interested in Aestik, don't expect combat to be its main draw. Its combat's not bad. I could pogo on jabronis all day. Just don't expect the challenge. That's it for this section. There's really no challenge in combat, so take that for what it's worth. But if you do find combat challenging, there's accessibility options just in case. As far as the game's combat goes, there's depth to it, but if you don't want to explore that depth, you'll be fine sticking with the basic 3-hit combos while juking and jiving. That's what I did, and I had a good time. And there's always the nuclear option. Do not nerf the pogo, ever.
Abilities. Platforming.
This section may be Aestik's greatest strength. The abilities Owlet gets are pretty standard, though they come with their own twists. For instance, you get a double jump pretty early, but its height is set, so you have to be mindful with it. There's also a hidden triple jump that's missable, and this triple jump is absolutely necessary for optional in-game platforming sections. I love it when devs have the to make important stuff missable. And when I say missable, I don't mean missable for that playthrough. I mean you made an oversight and can go back and get it. Locking me out of content for an entire playthrough sucks, but we'll get to that soon enough, Aestik. Owlet also gets a cool teleport ability I found to be intuitive and fun to use. And all these abilities come together to make some really outstanding platforming. That's right,
Aestik.
has very good platforming and great level design. I thoroughly enjoyed every platforming section and challenge the game threw at me, and almost every challenging platforming section, if not all of them, culminated with unlocking some sort of shortcut, allowing me to circumvent these demanding and time-consuming sections in the future. Of course, I always enjoy anything that improves backtracking. That's it for this section. There's a ton more I can say about Aestik's platforming, but I feel a lot of it is spoilery, so I'll leave it for the spoiler section. Just know platforming's great and engaging. Platforming may seem rudimentary at first, but it eventually ramps up, especially in the game's optional sections, which is exactly where I want my toughest platforming to be.
Progression.
Aestik is very much a Metroid-like. No leveling, no stats, no gear. It also doesn't have crafting, but it does have a very simple economy. Owlet has a wallet that can only hold so much sin. Oh, sin is this game's currency, and you get it by killing things. So that's good. As you progress, you find upgrades to increase how much sin you can hold. You use sin for a couple of things: buying consumables at the game's shop that activate upon purchase, or paying tolls to unlock gates. These tolls were a good idea, but didn't really add much to the experience. Mostly they'd unlock shortcuts, which is fine, but sometimes you want a little something more for your hard-earned sin, you know? As for player expression, there's not a whole lot here, which is unexpected coming from a game that's so heavily inspired by Hollow Knight. There are 0 modifiers or accessories in Aestik. Well, that's not entirely true. The quote-unquote accessories you can equip are found in your followers, these little dudes who follow you around. There are several to find and unlock, and each adds a specific modifier, such as doing a counterattack when you get hit or lowering the cost of healing potions. You can only equip one at a time, and equipping the one you want requires you to go to a specific area, which is kind of a hassle considering you can equip and re-equip runes in the pause menu. Player expression mainly falls on the game's runes, of which you can equip 4 of, but only 4 of each unique category. Each category is labeled rune 1 through 4, and each category holds a set of specific runes. One rune slot is used just for offensive runes, while another is used only for whichever double jump you want to use. It's an odd setup that works well enough, but is ultimately very limiting and does very little for player expression, to be honest. The only thing you can increase is Owlet's healing potion. His potion has 3 attributes: healing amount, healing cost, and damage increase for offensive runes. And you have a choice to increase one of these attributes every time you find the potion icon while exploring. This was fine, but this is definitely where the game's challenge gets broken. If you only focus on lowering healing cost and increasing healing amount, you can do what I did and just face tank every boss in the game. Some may find this extreme drop in difficulty detrimental to the game, but I didn't. I cannot overstate how much I love breaking a game, whether it be by making the game a cakewalk or by sequence breaking. But I'm not one for cheesing. It only works if I earn it. And since I earned my face-tanking abilities through thorough exploration, I perceived the easy boss fights as a reward. Beauty really is in the eye of the beholder. That's it for progression. Aestik is a Metroid-like with 0 RPG elements. This is not a critique, this is just a categorization. I was a little disappointed in the lack of player expression, but I loved how you could essentially break the game's difficulty by being good at exploration. Speaking of exploration... Considering the game's short length, Aestik's exploration is very solid. I completed my first playthrough in a little over 5 hours and my second playthrough in about an hour, and I'll explain why a second playthrough felt necessary in the following section. I'm not one to complain if a game is too short as long as I enjoyed my time with it, and I definitely enjoyed my time within the realm of Aestik. So, what made it enjoyable? Lots of things, really. I always like to start with the collectibles. There's not a whole lot to collect, but proportionally to the game's length, there's enough to keep you interested. There are potion upgrades, followers to find, interesting NPCs to come across, and journal pages that reveal the game's lore. Probably the coolest thing to find are these gates that transport you to challenge rooms. None of these rooms are actually very challenging, but the reward was something called Fragment of a Previous Mind, which, let's face it, is a freaking cool name of a thing to find in a Metroidvania. And of course, collecting these offers rewards, and that's always delicious. The next thing that made exploration enjoyable was the biomes. They're varied and stay away from the typical platformer tropes of forest area, hot area, cold area, etc. And I always appreciate a little originality, though I can see some arguing the uncanny resemblance some locales have to Hollow Knight's biomes. But Hollow Knight didn't have a biome full of these f***ing spear! One thing I really liked about Aestik's exploration was the mystery and how the game teases you with so much weird stuff. I'm gonna be vague to avoid spoilers. There's a very late game objective you're given that involves exploring the map and doing things. Receiving a map retreading quest so late in the game typically would destroy a game's pacing, but I had already explored the map and done the things. So when I was given this objective and saw that I had already completed it, I was all like, hell yeah. It's always a great feeling to have completed something before the game even told me I had to do it. It's a testament to the MV's openness. Now, let me wrap this back to my original thought on mystery. While exploring the map, I organically came across the areas of interest for this late game objective and thought to myself, what the heck is this place? And why are there so many of them? And what's up with every time I complete one of these areas? All this mystery stewed in my skull for a great majority of the game, and I absolutely loved it. But was the payoff good? Yeah, it was. I was very happy with this late game quest's bounty. And the game just steeps you in mystery the entire time. What's going on in this realm? What happened to its inhabitants? What are these fragments of a previous mind? What is the spirit heart? Who even am I and what is my goal? That feeling of intrigue keeps you motivated to explore this game's world to the very end, and it's one of my favorite things about Metroidvanias. But does every mystery pay off in the end? We'll discuss that in the next few sections. For now, I want to wrap this section up by discussing the game's map and backtracking. The map looks fine, but it has some quirks. I didn't really like its map markers. You don't have a lot of control over where you place them. You tell the game to place a marker on the map, and it does it for you, with no rhyme or reason. It just places an X on the map in the room you're in. There's a hub area called the Spirit Heart that you enter by smacking the orb atop save point columns. There's all kinds of stuff you can do here, but one of the better things it offers is fast travel. But the fast travel is a very limited waypoint system with only 3 waypoints in the entire game, with only one of these waypoints being in a convenient spot. I don't know why it was designed this way, but it was a big miss in my opinion. Fast travel basically felt pointless. That's it for exploration. Overall, I liked it. The game kept the mystery going, and I liked to explore its weird and oftentimes creepy biomes. It's just a shame that the map could use some work and the fast travel system was so lackluster.
Atmosphere. Narrative.
Aestik's atmosphere is a mixed bag. I'll start with the positive. The music. It's so good. I was especially drawn in by the game's earlier tracks. There's some high quality stuff here. Next, the game's dire tone and theming juxtaposed against the cutesy visuals. It's just a nice mix I like to see. Okay, as for the negatives, I just didn't like the game's art direction. This is subjective, but I found the character designs not to my liking. Some looked fine, while others looked very strange. And I feel like all the characters lacked depth. And this lack of depth, I felt extended to other objects in the game, be they environmental or enemy projectiles. I don't know. I feel like I'm very underqualified to critique art because I'm as far away from being an artist as one can get. So I'll just say I didn't like the game's art and leave it at that. I did love Owlet though. He looked adorable and I loved his running animation. As for the narrative, remember in the last section when I asked if the game's many mysteries paid off? Yeah, I think this game's narrative is a little too opaque. It's honestly not bad. It mostly deals in archetypes and Souls-like tropes, a fallen kingdom, corruption, cycles, things of that nature. And its delivery is fine, mostly character dialogue and journal entries, but I just couldn't wrap my head around all of it. I'll provide my conjecture and interpretation in the spoilers section, but for now, I'll just say I left this game very confused. I achieved 3 of the game's endings, which I think is all of them, though the save file looks like there may be 6. Anyway, despite seeing all 3 endings, I still have no clue what's going on. Granted, I missed a journal entry and didn't read any of the bestiary, so if that has the answers I need and you found them, let me know in the comments below. Remember when I said I'd explain why a second playthrough felt necessary? It actually wasn't for the endings. You can get all 3 endings in one run. I did a second playthrough because this game has branching paths with its choices. There are 4 or 5 choices that you're given throughout the game, and each choice has consequences. These choices lead to alternative boss fights, with some changing things up drastically. I'm not going to spoil any of it, but I just wanted to say I liked it. And the game keeps track of the choices you make in the Spirit Heart. So when you do New Game Plus, which this game totally has by the way, you'll know exactly what choices you've already made so you can do the opposite on the second run. It's a nice touch that changes the game quite a bit in certain areas, but your choices ultimately do not affect the game's endings, at least not that I could tell. Alright, on to the spoilers section. Go here to fast travel to my final thoughts and score.
Spoilers.
Welcome to the spoiler section, where every little thing is brought up and the format don't matter. Okay, so what the f happened in this game? You're an owlet, which I guess are celestial beings akin to angels, or maybe even gods. The people in the realm of Aestik view owlets as gods, or at least they viewed the owlet who became the goddess of the mist as a god. And then there's the odd god who grows a mustache and ascends to godhood by being so nihilistic. The dude actually resurrects owlet whenever he dies, so he has to be a legit god, right? I just have no clue what's happening. Let's start from the beginning. Something happened in the realm of Aestik that's driving its inhabitants mad, so Owlet has been sent to find the source of corruption and eliminate it, I think? He traverses the land, finds the source of corruption, and then kills the lady holding the source back. Then he becomes a spirit keeper like the one in the Spirit Heart, and the ones who were literally attacking him 2 screens prior. What is even going on? Maybe the other endings will have answers. There are 2 alternate endings that require you to do the map retreading quest I mentioned a while ago. You go to the areas of interest, which are these huge gaping mouths filled with parasites. What the hell is going on? Was the entirety of Aestik being devoured by some huge creature that somehow died? What the hell killed it? Complete decently challenging platforming sections to light 6 to 8 candles, depending on the alternate ending you want. Why candles? What is actually happening? And then return to the final biome to choose one of 2 paths. The 6 candle path leads to an optional boss that I think is an evolved owlet that's ascended to godhood, and maybe he's the one who's really causing all this mess and corruption. I guess you defeat him and take his place, which saves Aestik from the corruption, but the game states the cycle will start anew, so I guess the corruption will happen again eventually, meaning your owlet will become the next mad celestial that corrupts Aestik, meaning another owlet will be forced to do this journey to take you down and take your place. That's depressing, but that's a standard Souls-like ending if I've ever seen one. Not that Aestik is a Souls-like, it just takes inspiration from them. So, mystery solved, right? Wrong. There's the 8 candle path we haven't discussed yet. Taking this path leads you to the game's most challenging platforming section, which, I might add, is a whole lot of fun. I had been waiting the entire game for some ridiculous platforming section to really test my platforming chops, and the 8 candle path didn't disappoint, let me tell you. What did disappoint was what waited for me at the end. It's me, but with weird eyes, which represents your early ascension to godhood, I think, before you become a mad celestial. And I just do not know the significance of this ending. My interpretation is this. Dark Souls! The major reoccurring theme in Dark Souls is stagnation. What happens to a world that resists change? What happens when the powers that be refuse to relinquish that power to the next generation? The answer is rot and decay. Same thing with Aestik, I believe. In the first ending, you kill the Nycha, thus allowing the corruption to destroy the realm of Aestik, I think. This is the bad ending. In the 6 candle path, you do your duty by killing the Mad Celestial and taking his place, dooming yourself to be the next Mad Celestial to corrupt Aestik in future. This is the neutral ending because you've done what you're supposed to do to achieve the status quo. Then there's the 8 candle path, the good ending. This is where Owlet meets himself before he's become the Mad Celestial. This pre-Mad Owlet relinquishes his power to the next Owlet before he allows that power to corrupt him and the land. This new healthier cycle replaces the old toxic cycle, thus truly ridding Aestik of the corruption. That's my reading of the endings anyway. I'm pretty confident in my interpretations, but I'm still confused as to what the heck the giant thing I was entering to light the candles even was. And why candles? If you know, sound off in the comments below. Just make sure to tag it as spoilers, please.
Final thoughts and score.
Aestik made for a fun little experience. While its combat was simplistic and its boss fights a breeze, the real star is its fun platforming. The challenges are well designed, with optional, tougher sections that reward exploration and skill. However, the game's map design and fast travel system leave much to be desired. Overall, Aestik offers an enjoyable experience full of intrigue and engaging platforming, though its story can be a bit too opaque. I award Aestik a 7 out of 10.
Tier placement.
Aestik does a lot of things right on the Metroidvania front. Exploration motivated by intrigue, great platforming, optional paths leading to non-critical biomes and alternate endings. This is all great stuff, but what it lacks for MV enthusiasts is challenging combat. Face-tanking bosses who have 2, maybe 3 attacks isn't very engaging, and backtracking can be a dull slog thanks to the unhelpful fast travel system. Aestik ends its cycle of suffering in the C tier. Aestik may not be a paragon of the genre, but I think it's an excellent beginner MV for people looking to dip their toes into Metroidvanias. It's not overly challenging, it's relatively short with a 5 to 6 hour runtime, and it's a nice microcosm of what a good MV should do in regards to non-linearity and optional paths leading to alternate endings. And who could ask for anything more from their MV? You get it? Because he's an owl. Like and subscribe for more puns!